And welcome back, everybody. I wanted to come back with a real quick update, at least on the next scenario, which was the exporting of all of the IP addresses from a subnet, being able to selectively pick all of the IPs, whether they're static, reserved, dynamic. And then as I'm processing each one and building out that device that I'm going to output into the grid view from that last video, what I want to do then is go out and run the pings, build the list, and if it doesn't have a DNS record, at least from an A record, I'm telling it to go out and resolve the PTR record and then building out this list. Now, one thing to note when you're dealing with these APIs, that any kind of exports are not in IP address integer format, or they're not in a sorted format by IP address. They're based on ID, which is a database. So one thing I had to do in this list, or I did to make sure of, is in each of my object constructors, I went ahead and used that convert to decimal IP to build the integer for the IP to store with the record. And then as the very last option here, I'm building an array. So instead of outputting this each time, I'm going to build an array. And at the very end of this, I'm going to sort on this object, and that'll give me the proper IP sort. So what we look to see here then is if I go and do the lookup subnet IP, and we'll tell this out grid view, this one takes a little bit longer, or at least it appears to, because instead of outputting to screen and give you some kind of feedback, I'm just storing it all in an array, and I'm waiting until we're complete to give everything back. Now, that also brings up another good point about doing things in the background, working with jobs and tasks. So there may be a video here coming up soon that we may talk about doing background tasks and jobs in order to increase performance and to wait till the process is done. So this does take through the 250 addresses or so that I'm going out and extracting. It takes just about a minute. And I think what I'll do with this is put some dot, just kind of here I am doing this kind of thing to give some status feedback. All right, there we go. So now it just instantly comes up instead of kind of feeding the display we had before. And you'll notice now I have the integer IP at the or IP int at the end that I'm sorting by. So now everything is in its proper IP sort, and now I can go in and filter others. But notice in that query that I was specifying that I wanted all of these devices to be returned, and I could go back in and of course say I only want these to do static, and I could specify that in the adder type. And with this, I would do for equals static, because that's the command. And then I'll just run this. It'll just be a little bit quicker, because there's not as many static IP addresses, but then also all of the dynamic addresses are not in use. So it's timing out a little bit more on the DNS. All right, so there's just a couple scenarios this morning, and I'll come back maybe tomorrow or the next day or so and look at some others, perhaps with importing data in bulk, deleting domains, importing, and so on, and we'll start with that. Thanks very much for joining again, and I'll talk to you soon.